Hi, I'm Richard Thompson, and I'm a member of the All Souls Unitarian Universalist Forum Committee. I'm also by far and away the best dressed and best looking guy here. No, in all seriousness, welcome to the All Souls Forum. Our mission is to provide a platform for the discussion of significant issues, especially those affecting ethical values in our contemporary world, and to promote critical thinking. In the time of COVID-19, we will be meeting online until it is safe to resume in-person services. We recognize the limitations of the Zoom platform. However, we are very confident that we can provide valuable forum discussions. Today, it is my privilege and honor to introduce Jason Miles, who will be talking about the topic of prison reform from the inside out, that is, rehabilitating prisoners to reform prisons. When Jason is done, we will do a short break and take up the collection, and then we'll do a call for our structured question and answer session. So with that, Jason, please take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, Richard, and I'm very jealous of your tie. And thanks for having us. Thanks for hosting us. My name is, like Richard already said, my name is Jason Miles. I am with Reaching Out From Within. We're a prison-based organization. Today, I'm going to give you a little history of Reaching Out From Within, kind of how we got started, kind of give you the rundown of what we do inside the prisons. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and my experiences as well. So two people that I want to talk about at the beginning are Greg Musselman and Sue Ellen Freed. And Greg Musselman was incarcerated, serving a life sentence. And the time frame right now that I want to talk about is about the mid to the late 70s. Greg Musselman's in prison, serving a life sentence. Sue Ellen Freed is working with child abuse prevention. And Greg was part of the Lifers Club in the maximum security part of the prison. And the Lifers Club at that time was an organization for the residents of Lansing Correctional Facility, to where they would try to do, pro-social kind of things. And, whether it was self-help type stuff or reaching out to the community, just trying to do some positive things for the guys, or trying to do positive things to keep the guys moving in a positive direction. So the Lifers Club were doing things about child abuse. They were, researching child abuse, whether it was getting information about it, period, or whether it was conducting studies and surveys and asking the guys incarcerated, have you experienced child abuse? And what they did find was that there was a high number of the guys that were incarcerated that were experiencing child abuse. And so the Lifers Club reached out to Sue Ellen to come in and give a talk about child abuse. So Sue Ellen came in and gave a talk about child abuse. And that was how the initial contact between Sue Ellen Freed and Greg Musselman was made. And Greg eventually was moved to the minimum custody part of the prison. And he reached out to Sue Ellen and asked her for some direction. Said, I think the actual quote was, "We have some warm bodies up here that are in need of some direction." And Sue Ellen had some help that she needed with some of the organizations she was part of. And so Greg had a bunch of people around him, residents around him, and they would, stuff envelopes. They would come up with fundraising ideas. And they also were a judge of a contest that was 10 ways to reduce interpersonal violence. And so the prison inmates judged the contest and declared a winner. And Sue Ellen was very grateful to everybody for helping her out. And so she asked Greg, hey, what can we out here do for you all in there? And what Greg said at that time, there was little to none, no kind of services inside there for the residents to kind of try to help themselves pretty much. So Greg asked Sue Ellen if she could round up some experts on different topics, different topics being addiction, substance abuse, domestic violence, child abuse, and the what Greg was after was Greg, and I'm going to paraphrase this. This isn't a direct quote, but Greg was after. He was trying to understand the roots of violence in not only his life, but he was trying to give the other residents that understanding as well, for them to understand the roots of violence in their lives. And so these experts would come in, and Greg was the type of person that he had a photographic memory, and he also had just the kind of memory that if he heard something, he could very well repeat it verbatim the way that it was told to him. So the experts would come in and give these presentations on these different topics, and Greg would remember what they had said. He wasn't writing anything down; he was just remembering what they said, and he would teach classes based off of what they had said. And the way he would do the classes is he would present the information, and then he would ask questions. So we kind of call that the Socratic method, where he would present information and then he would ask questions. And the questions were designed to be thought-provoking. They were designed to foster discussion. And these were the kind of questions that Greg was asking. And Greg had a special way of pulling people into, maybe somebody was reluctant to say something. He just kind of had a way of sensing that out in the room and pulling that out of the person and involving them and including them. He really had a great way of doing that. And so Greg's doing this, and then along comes a person by the name of Lisa Dunn, and she was serving, I believe at the time, 6 life sentences. And I don't want to get too off of the tangent here, but at that time, the prison in Lansing was co-ed. So that's why she was there at the same time Greg was there. And so she is telling Greg, she's saying, you need to write this down because you're just up here teaching the class and this is cool, but this needs to be down on paper so that way we have it, we don't lose it. And so she took notes when Greg would teach the classes, and she ended up typing everything up, and all her efforts became what we refer to now as the Blue Book. And the Blue Book is what I got a copy of right here in my hand. And the Blue Book has all the units in it that I described. All the units were created by prison inmates, for prison inmates. And at different times after Greg, we have had groups that will submit units, and we will include those in the Blue Book. So the Blue Book is kind of it's been the same now for a little bit, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, but it is fluid. We're adding units in, we're taking units out. We receive feedback from the guys and gals in prison as far as, what works, what doesn't work. So we're constantly kind of changing it as we need to. And so all this is happening at the what we call the East Unit at Lansing Correctional Facility, which was also known as the Minimum Custody Unit. All this is taking place there. And what happened over the years, so we were officially, let me back up just a second. We were officially founded in 1982. So 1982 is the official year that they came together and said, this is our group, this is what we're about, this is what we're doing. That was 1982. And since 1982, I think it was about 1988, 89 when we officially got the Blue Book in order to where it was printed off. And so then, somewhere from when we were started in 82 to 89, a little bit after, guys would get transferred to different facilities in Kansas, different prison facilities in Kansas. So I think off the top of my head, Kansas has about 8 prisons. So guys would get transferred to different prisons, and they would have their Blue Book with them. They would go to the warden and they would say, hey, this group really changed my life. I really would like to get this group started here in this prison. Are you okay with this? And of course, they were never denied. They were allowed to start the group there in a different prison. So that's how we were able to get into all the prisons in Kansas. And we also have had over the years, and currently do have, we have alumni group on the street. You know, as you can imagine, COVID had kind of put a damper in the in-person meeting things. We're kind of, in a sense, starting over from scratch with that, it feels like. But what the alumni groups are is they're basically we try to do it the same way as did the meetings inside, except for there's probably a huge chunk taken up at the beginning of the meeting, where the conversation is, you know, like, how are you doing? Do you need any job leads? Do you need any house leads? You know, and a lot of times it's the other guys or gals in the alumni meeting that are saying, well, I know that this job over here is hiring. I know my job is hiring. I know these apartments over here will rent to convicted felons. It's just a lot of that information is getting shared there, and a lot of support. You know, there might be somebody that's struggling with X, Y, and Z, you know, and they bring it up and they get some support there, because there's not anybody that's going to bring up a problem or an issue that hasn't already been, you know, there's somebody there that has already went through that issue. So they're really able to help out with that. And a lot of times, you know, these guys are running into guys that they've known on the inside, you know, the guys and the gals, they're running into people they knew on the inside. And so that really makes a difference in trying to help out. So we also were fortunate to, we have groups in North Carolina. So Sue Ellen was at a conference, a corrections conference, and was connected with some people who were very interested in reaching out from within, started in North Carolina. And we were fortunate enough to get that started. We've been out there for a number of years now, and it's going really well. We initially kind of were going strong, and then, as you can imagine, you know, it's kind of a broken record, but COVID hit and kind of just put a damper on a lot of the things we were trying to do out there. Fortunately, COVID is not over with yet, but it has died down some to where things are slowly getting back to where we want them to. So that's kind of my history, if you will, of reaching out from within. And what I like to do now is I like to give you kind of a little snapshot of what goes on for the guys and the gals, you know, like how the groups are kind of run. So our group is a little bit different in the fact that the guys and the gals, the residents, they of the correctional facilities, they run the groups. But we come in as volunteers, and we, you know, we're just, I mean, we're just kind of witnessing. I mean, we contribute and provide our outside world experience, but we're really just kind of there to just be a support and let them know that somebody is concerned with them changing, somebody does care. The groups are run by them. You know, they have a chairman, co-chair, secretary, treasurer, librarian, and the co-chairman or the chairman will usually pick somebody to facilitate the meetings. And so they use the blue book. I pointed out the blue book earlier. It has the units in it, and the group members decide which unit they want to do. You know, some groups start at the beginning of the unit and go to the end. Some of the groups might be like, you know, hey, we got a lot of members that are having some substance abuse issues or some anger issues or some, you know, domestic violence, you know, not issues, but, you know, some, they want to really kind of work on that. So they'll kind of jump around if that's their prerogative. You know, we don't control what unit they work on. And that's where we're really different from other groups, you know, because a lot of other groups that are inside the prison, you know, you have somebody coming in from the outside, or you have staff that it's like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is how we're running the group. I mean, we have essential elements of reaching out from within that make us a group, you know, make us reaching out from within. But the group itself is run by the residents inside the correctional facilities. So we start off the group with a moment of silence. And the moment of silence is, you know, we say the moment of silence is for victims of violence and abuse. And we have a moment of silence. And then we go around the group, and everybody has to give a positive thought. Now, a positive thought can it can take many forms. You know, some people bring Bible verses, some people bring quotes from famous people, some people will come in and say, my positive thought is I talked to my son the other day on the phone and it was nice to connect with him. Some people will say, you know, it was a sunny day today. You know, it's whatever that they have on their heart to speak about. That's what happens during the positive thought. And then once the positive thoughts are done, then we get into the blue book. And kind of like I said earlier, the blue book is set up in what's been described as a Socratic method, to where the book is presenting you with information. It's about a paragraph, uh, sometimes shorter, but about a paragraph of information. And then at the end of the paragraph, there are thought-provoking questions that are designed to bring about discussion. And then, you know, and different groups will handle that different ways too. You know, some groups will have, you know, you raise your hand and then you get called on. And if you don't raise your hand, you know, you're not going to get called on, you don't speak. And then some groups start it, you know, and we sit in a circle too. And I always refer to it as our sacred circle. You know, whenever I go to a group, I refer to it as a sacred circle. That's how I feel about it. But we start at one end of the circle, and you know, sometimes they'll start at one end of the circle and go around. That way, it kind of gives everybody. I like that personally because it gives everybody an opportunity to share. You might have some people that are a little shy or less reluctant to share, but when you go around in a circle like that, it seems like very rarely do you get somebody that'll pass on that. And so that's that. And then at the end of the meeting, we do the Optimist Creed, and we read the Optimist Creed. And the fun thing is like we'll say promise yourself, and then somebody will read the deal, and then everybody will repeat in unison promise yourself at the end of every line of the Optimist Creed. It's really cool. And so that's pretty much how the groups are ran. We do also participate in the Mentoring for Success program that's ran through the state of Kansas. Excuse me. And the Mentoring for Success program is a wonderful program that matches incarcerated residents with a mentor a year before they get out, and a year. So you receive state support a year before you get out and a year after you get out. And so what I love about the way the system is now, as opposed to the way it is a while back, is you can be a volunteer and a mentor. So myself and many other people come in and we are volunteer. You know, we come into the weekly meetings as volunteers, but we're also mentors. So we're mentoring the people, usually the ones that are in our meetings. We're also mentoring them as well. And so the Mentoring for Success program, you'll get matched. You know, it's men with men, women with women. They're also allowed. You can do like a couple, a guy and a gal could mentor either a gal or a guy. They do allow that to happen, but you're working with the resident on their plan for when they get out. Like, okay, you know, I see, and this is just kind of a rough example, but it could be something like, you know, I see here that you have a lot of crimes on here that, you know, tell me about this. You know, maybe let's say there's a lot of burglary and theft, and then the guy explains, well, you know, that was because I was on drugs, you know, and I was stealing things to support my habit. Well, then obviously you're going to be like, well, okay, well, tell me about your you know, tell me what you're doing to, you know, stay away from drugs. What's your recovery looking like? You know, and they would tell you different things, and then they would come up with the plan. That's the whole thing, is for them to own it. You know, they're going to come up with the plan that's going to help them be successful. I mean, we're there to kind of put little deals in their ear, like, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And so they'll kind of come up with this plan, and they'll say, okay, well, what does this look like now? And now might be, you know, going to recovery meetings while they're incarcerated. And then it'll be, okay, well, what is this going to look like when you get out? And the getting out might be going to recovery meetings when they get out. So then, you know, we would brainstorm and try to come up with, okay, well, where are you going when you get out? What's your housing situation? What's your transportation situation? What's your job situation? Just trying to brainstorm and come up with ideas of this. And the state has support to where if the person you're mentoring has nowhere to go, then you can go to the mentor coordinator and say, hey, my person has nowhere to go. What are the options? And they can come up with different options. Or it might be, you know, my person does not have a job, and it'll be okay. Well, we know these places are hiring, and this is around where your person wants to go to, and you just kind of brainstorm things and figure things out, and are there to help the person transition back into society. And so that's the mentoring for success deal piece that a lot of us participate in. And I already kind of talked about the alumni groups, and there are uh, a handful of us that have been through the system that come back in as volunteers and mentors. Excuse me. So those are the kind of things I kind of was, and I apologize, that was kind of a quick rundown, but I wanted to kind of give you an idea of what it's like for somebody who's incarcerated to go to be involved with our organization. Like kind of like what do they go through? What's it like for them? So I was kind of trying to give you a rough deal of that. So with all that said, I'll kind of give you my experience, and my experience is in 1991 at the age of 17, I was sentenced to prison because of my involvement in a homicide. I came into the system and I was involved in reaching out from within. I think I first got involved about 1995. And the thing that reaching out from within did for me was I was kind of on my own path of self-knowledge, of trying to learn about myself, trying to figure out, why did I do the things I did? Why was I the way that I was? Kind of also, like what kind of person do I want to be? And how do I become that person? So I was kind of on this little journey, and I actually in the prison I was Greg Muslim's bunkie. So in the prison, in the minimum custody unit, is just kind of an open dorm, and I was on the top bunk, Greg was on the bottom bunk. So that was how I was first introduced to Greg, and then I kind of found out about reaching out from within from Greg, and so I started going to the meetings. And for me, what the meetings really did was it kind of honed my focus on self-discovery, my focus on doing the right thing. It put me around a lot of positive people because in prison there's just a lot of negativity, and I don't know that it's a whole lot different than the real society because it is a society in itself, and there's negative people out here just as well as they're in there. So it's just a matter of, it kind of got me around people that were being positive, trying to do something with their lives. They were on the same path that I was on, self-discovery, trying to do the right thing, trying to be new and different people. And it also connected me with the volunteers that were coming in for reaching out from within. And the volunteers let me know that somebody cared about me being a different person. Like it was almost like somebody was rooting for me. And when I got out, we had the alumni group was going. I had gotten out, and so the support and everything that I had while I was incarcerated, once I got out, I still had that. I had the guys that had been in that were out here now. I had them that I could call, had them that I could hang out with. I wouldn't have to worry about, hanging out with them and then all of a sudden they're doing something illegal or negative. It's going to get me in trouble. I mean, we were just a collective of guys and gals who were kind of looking out for each other, and the volunteers helped with that too. So, and I guess want to put a quick little deal out there, kind of like, what do we need? What does reaching out from within need? Reaching out from within, we definitely need funds and volunteers. And the best way to get a hold of us is off our website. If you go to rofw.org, and there should be a button in there, contact us button, and then you can contact us. Right now, because of, I guess I should kind of give you a COVID update. A lot of the groups, not all of them, across the state of Kansas and North Carolina, a lot of them are meeting again. Not all of them, because of COVID, but some of them have some restrictions on them. Like you have to wear a mask, which isn't really that big of a deal. But some of them they'll only let so many of us in at a time, that kind of thing. So, but we are in need of volunteers. and we're getting ready to do. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to talk about the gift boxes and the recognition banquets. So let me talk about those real quick. So every year we do gift boxes, and we have a recognition banquet, and these are done around the holiday season, around Christmas time. And what it is it's a box, and it used to be a bag. It's called a gift bag. We found that transporting boxes 400 miles across the state was a lot easier than bags. So now we call them gift boxes. So inside the box is, shampoo, soap, toothpaste, toothbrush, protein bar, candy bar, some cards, a composition notebook, shaving cream. For the women, we try to provide some makeup. The frustrating / fun part of it is it can't be any glass. It has to all be plastic containers. And I'm probably missing some stuff, but it's those kind of items that we try to put in there just to kind of let our people know that we're thinking about them. And so the recognition banquet is, it's kind of a holiday banquet. We call it a recognition banquet because we celebrate people's participation in the groups, and we kind of go off of 50. 50 is a big deal for us because 50 basically means that you've been participating in our groups for a year, because most of our groups, if not all of our groups, meet once a week. So if you're getting a certificate for 50 meetings, that means for a whole solid year you've went to a meeting. And so we celebrate them in increments of 50. So, we had the 50 club, and then we do like the century, and we have some people who have been 400, 500 meetings, which is great. I mean, it's probably not so great for them because that means they've been locked up a little bit, but it's cool for us because we're able to have them in our groups and watch them grow. So those are the kind of the things that, and with the recognition banquets and the gift boxes, those are taking place in every prison in Kansas. So we're traveling around to the different correctional facilities in the month of December to try to meet everybody. And it's a really great time for us to get out because some of the groups are kind of far out and we're not able, sometimes December is the only time that we get an opportunity to get out there. So I think I've covered everything that I meant to cover. I'm sure that I probably missed something, but.
Great. Thank you so much, Jason. It was very enlightening to hear all that. I guess at this point, we're going to load the donation video for collections and take a very brief break here. So while they're getting that strikingly handsome young man up there, I want to tell everyone that there is a forum committee meeting this Thursday at 7. We will be meeting via Zoom. And I assume, Rita, that's going to be on the virtual, just the regular Zoom link that we usually use. Is it the forum Zoom link or the other one? Okay, so yeah, use the forum link on allsoulskc.org. And also, while we're doing this, I want to remind everyone that next week our speaker will be Zach Pistora, who will be talking about threats to the Kansas water supply. All right, thanks for attending today. The All Souls Forum is very important to our church. It provides us a chance to discuss the significant issues that impact our community. It's also important to me personally because I get to learn about the political issues that shape our world and ask questions of our speakers. From the attempted coup on the Capitol to recycling, we discuss all of the important issues. It costs about $100 a week to produce the forum. That's less than $5 a week per person watching on an average week. Andrea, can you show us how to support the UU Forum?
I'd be happy to, Richard. You can always send a check to the church. Be sure to put forum in the memo line. You'll find the address in chat, or you can find it on our website. To pay online, you can go to the All Souls website and click the big blue button, or click the link in chat. When you get to the giving page, enter the amount that you would like to give. On the next line, be sure to pick Give to Forum so that the money comes to support the forum. After that, you can choose how often you'd like to give. You can leave it at Give This One Time, or you can pick Give This Weekly, every 2 weeks, monthly, or yearly.
I like the idea of making a payment each month. It's just easier to budget.
I agree. That's what I usually do. After that, you can choose if you'd like to give with a debit card, credit card, or ACH bank transfer. The bank transfer will ask you to enter your numbers off of your check, and it will come directly out of your checking account. Once you've chosen that, pick Continue, enter the rest of your information. Feel free to add any comments you'd like. And if you'd like to cover the processing fee, you can click the button there and then click the Give bar.
Well, that seems easy enough. And let me take a moment to just say, hey, thanks to everyone making or planning on making a contribution. Now, Andrea, you keep mentioning that the links are in the chat. How do I see that?
If you're on a computer, it will open to the right of the video of the speaker without blocking anything. If you decide you're done, you can click the X at the top to close it, and that will not move you out of the meeting.
All right. So before we move on to the Q&A, can you please remind everyone how to virtually raise your hand?
Of course. Again, bring your mouse down to the bottom of your screen and look for the Reactions button with the smiley face on it. Click it and then click anywhere on the Raise Hand bar. Zoom will put you in queue so that the moderator can call on you in the order your hand was raised. If you want to lower your hand, just repeat the steps and the bar will now have the lower hand option. If you'd like to see where you are in the queue, you can push the Participants button and you will see this view showing you the order that you will be called on.
And for those of you on a phone, you can push *9.
Anything else I can show you guys today, Richard?
No, I think that covers it. It's time for questions. All right, so I did see Carol Hunt dropped a question in the chat. She wants to know how racially diverse our groups are.
Oh, oh, that's a great question. So I think most of, and this is kind of the problem of having groups all across the state and us kind of being over here. So most of my experience through the years has been when I visit different groups that it's very racially diverse, that they're, it's almost half, it's almost kind of half and half. I guess that's the best way I could describe it. There's a good mix of not only just race, but a mix of religions too, people of a lot of different backgrounds. There's a saying that I like to use. It says, we are people that would not normally mix. And that's kind of a statement that I love because it brings, we have different people with different backgrounds, you know, different childhoods, different experiences, and they all come together and we're kind of learning from one another. And it kind of makes for a really great group, you know. And then when you have, you know, you have people with different races, different religions, they're all kind of coming together. Because I guess I kind of really didn't say that. We're a secular organization, which kind of sets us apart because most of a good chunk of the groups that are inside the prisons are religious. And so we're not, though. We accept anybody, regardless of your religion, what your religion is, or you have no religion. We accept everybody. And so we do have a really great mix. I'm really proud of the mix that we have in our groups.
I'm going to ask the next question. Can you please talk a little bit about the symposium we're planning in March?
Sure. So the symposium is a collection. It's kind of a collection of ideas where we're trying to bring different people together all across the country that have ideas on reducing mass incarceration, kind of what they're doing that's working as far as being able to have programming that keeps people out of prison. So that's, just kind of new thinking, new programs, new ways of doing things. We're really trying to, I think in a way, we're really trying to not only promote that, but encourage that and reward that by showcasing it at our symposium. So we're having a bunch of different topics of whether it's housing or what's going on inside the prisons, what's going on outside the prisons. We're just trying to bring, elected officials, volunteers, just everybody together.
Thank you for that. I'd like to add real quick that in the coming months, people will be able to buy tickets to that forum. And right now we're planning it as an in-person event in Overland Park. I would also like to add that Jason made a comment about the annual banquet. At some point, we will be looking for volunteers to put together those gift boxes, most likely. And we will most likely also be looking for donations. However, that's not something we need yet. But eventually, if any of you are interested, you can contact me. Joe, you're up.
Hey, thanks, Jason. Hey, have you done a lot, has the group explored like using writing as a way to kind of help people find themselves? And I don't necessarily mean like journaling, although that could certainly be a part of it, but I always thought that there'd be opportunities to almost like fiction writing, but they could, finding ways to express and finding the writer inside people. If you thought that might be helpful, that's something that you've explored.
Actually, you saying that just reminds me of the fact that I didn't talk about the newsletter. And so we have a newsletter that we put out, and the newsletter every quarter we come out with a newsletter. And so every group puts in submissions, and it can be, I've seen all kinds of submissions. We have ones that are just really formal where they're saying, hey, it's almost like a journal, like, on this date we did this, on this date we did that. Some of them are where somebody's expressing how reaching up from within has helped them change. Some of them are where they talk about a lesson that they've learned. We've had stuff on there. Somebody submitted stuff about epigenetics, which was the first time that I had ever even heard that concept, but it came from somebody who was incarcerated educating me about new scientific methods of genetics. So, it's just, it runs the gambit all across the deal for that. So probably, Joe, probably to answer your question, probably not. It goes on, but it's probably not in the way that you would think. But I feel like we could definitely do a better job through the newsletter of trying to express it in the way that you did express it. I appreciate the way that you expressed it.
I'd also like to add that if you want to subscribe to that newsletter, Jason and I are sort of tag teaming that. If you want to subscribe to it, you can go to our website, and there's a place where you can put your name and email in. Carol, you're up.
So I think we're really lucky we have this organization in Kansas. You have 2 states that have it, right? But I wonder, is it a 501c3? So donations can be included against tax? They are? Okay, great. Okay. Well, I look forward to hearing some more as we go along. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Craig Volland.
Yeah, thank you. I'm real impressed with what your group is doing and what you personally have done. But I'm sitting here thinking what it would be like to be incarcerated for a long period of time, 20 years, 30 years. And we have the example in the news lately about that individual who's the local prosecutor thinks that he's innocent, and there's a big dispute over that. But he'd been in for 40 years. And I'm wondering, how does the average person hold together? How do they maintain hope over those long periods of time?
Well, That's a good that's a good question. So myself, I was only incarcerated for 6 years, but I know I feel like we help, like reaching out from within does help. We're coming in there, we're having these groups, we're giving these guys something that's, the good term to use is pro-social. So we're giving the guys a pro-social activity to participate in. And it's also, they're in the group with other people who kind of, they move on and get out, but maybe they still stay in touch with the guys that are still locked up. So I like to think that we do bring some kind of hope in there, even though, as small as it may be, or as limited as it may be. I like to think that we do bring some kind of hope in there. My heart goes out to anybody that's incarcerated, wrongly convicted. I myself don't have any experience with that. I mean, everything, I wasn't innocent. That's kind of it's a difficult and a hard subject for me, because I don't like thinking about it, because it's really heart wrenching when you think about somebody, especially, like the example you just gave. You got somebody that's been locked up for 40 years for a crime they didn't commit. I mean, how do you how do you get up in the morning and brush your teeth? When you got that hanging over your head, I don't know. I like to think, that our groups help out in some kind of small way, but yeah, it's just a bad situation.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
So Richard Mahoney, aside from having an excellent first name, has also asked a very good question. He says, how hard is it for previously incarcerated persons to access government safety net programs such as housing assistance? And I'm assuming he's also thinking food stamps and stuff like that.
So that's a great question. Actually, yesterday I participated in a reentry simulation that was put on by the Kansas City Chamber of Commerce, and they give you a packet and they say, okay, your name's, like, everybody knows my name's Jason. They'll give me a packet that says, hey, your name's Richard. You just got out of prison, and now you got to go here to get your you need rent assistance, you need food stamps. Now you got to get them. Well, then they would come to go get the food stamps, and then the food stamp people would say, well, you don't have these 3 forms of ID, I can't help you. So then they get sent off to hunt up their 3 forms of ID, and then they come back again and say, okay, I got my 3 forms of ID, I need my food stamps. And then you say, well, sorry, you've been convicted of a drug felony, you're not eligible for food stamps. So there's a lot of that goes on, as far as it can be extremely hard. One of the things that I try to do if I'm mentoring somebody is I try to focus them on getting all this stuff taken care of while they're locked up, because once you get out and you hit the ground running, I mean, it's just a nightmare to try to access all this stuff at that point. But that's one of the great things about having a mentor, and why we're so fired up about the Mentoring for Success program, because the mentor can help with all these kind of things. And so a lot of this stuff is not easy. And what they told us at the simulation was, they said, we're playing under pre-COVID rules. These aren't COVID rules. If we're playing under COVID rules, you'd be toast, because all these things just got shut down. You need a social security card during COVID, forget about it. It's not going to happen. Maybe in a couple months you can get one. But it's like, you got to have the social security card now to be able to access food stamps, so it's just that's a great question, Richard. And unfortunately, the answer, it's not an easy answer. The answer is that it's extremely hard to impossible for the guys and gals coming out sometimes to access some of these services. That's why I think, number one, what we're doing in the groups is very important, but also what we're doing inside the groups with the mentoring is even more important, because we're able to advocate for the guys and gals and help them out and get them positioned for success when they come out, to make sure they don't go back in. Because, you look at how much dollars it takes to incarcerate somebody, And it's like, okay, well, we want to give the person a little bit of assistance, maybe, I don't know, $5,000, $10,000 worth of assistance, and you're saving having to pay $35,000 to incarcerate them. So to me, it's like a no brainer, but it can't get everybody on the same page. I mean, we're making progress, but it just seems like there's still a lot of hurdles for people to jump over that appear to me and a lot of other people that are unnecessary. So.
Renee, I don't think you've had a chance to ask a question yet, so go ahead.
Do I get to jump the line? So my question is about recidivism rates. I would think that the work you're doing helps a lot of people stay out of prison once they get out. But have you collected any data? Have you done any studies about that to support that guess of mine?
Yeah, we have. And actually, I'm loving these questions. You guys are great because all these questions are bringing up the things that I'm like, oh man, that's one of the things I should have brought up. So we have done many studies throughout the year throughout the years. And so the study that the one that we like to talk about the most is the one that shows the study where we had the guys the longest, because obviously, it's makes sense, the longer somebody's involved with our programs, the more successful they're going to be when they get out. So we found that we've had an 8% recidivism rate when we've looked at the individuals that were in our groups for a longer period of time. And we're pretty proud of that. And I just have to sit here and say, I'm one of probably at least 1,000, if not thousands, who have come through reaching out from within, are out and doing great. And that's the thing, you're hearing from me today because for whatever reason, I've stayed in reaching out from within space, but there's, almost 1,000, if not more, guys and gals that have went out and, maybe they went a little further away from Kansas City. So that's why we don't necessarily hear from them, but they're out there and they're doing great things. They're successful. They're off parole. They're, being leaders in their communities. They're doing all these great things. It's just, we don't necessarily hear from them, but they're out there and they're doing great things and they're not coming back to prison. They're not committing new crimes. So these are great things. And those are our success stories. We love those. We love those.
Thank you.
Zach, I'm going to give you a shot.
Hi, Zach.
Hi, Jason. Yeah, it's good to hear about reaching out from within. I did 6 years in Lansing. I was part of reaching out from within. It helped me to be a better person. And I've been out. I got released since 2016, and I've been out since then. I give credit to reaching out from within because today I'm a productive citizen. I have a job. I'm a assistant GM at a hotel. I'm real active in a recovery program. I have going on 3 years, almost 3 years of sobriety.
Congratulations. I stay in touch with guys that I knew in there. It's just that relationship, that family that we had when I was in there, and trying to stay in touch with other people, other volunteers that came in. I kind of look at myself as a success, what I'm doing with my life, how reaching out from within has taught me with different subjects like addiction, anger, all these issues that we discuss in that group structure that we have. We break into small groups. It's just how we stay connected, and I'm glad that this was discussed. And it's just amazing how reaching out from within has grown. We have 2 over in North Carolina. That newsletter is very important too, because
you can really express your thoughts. You can write poems. You can get everything out and express yourself. How reaching out from within has impacted your life. But I'm grateful that this is taking place today. It's good to see you, Jason.
Good to see you too, bud. Glad you're doing well, man. Warms my heart.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
Zach, that was very touching and some great information. Did you also have a question for Jason, or I mean, what you said was fine. I don't know if you have a question as well, or.
No, I seen this. I thought to just sit in and that was one of the questions about kind of have we heard about excesses from people that went through reaching out within, and I just thought share my success, let people know it is possible.
Well, thank you for doing that. And I'm very happy that you've been able to stay out of prison and been sober for quite some time. That's wonderful. And I see Renee applauding you. Let's see, who do we have left? Joe, go ahead.
Hey, Jason, if I could, if you'd be willing to talk a little bit more about your personal situation when you were in prison, because I know it sounds like you were trying to anchor yourself to something positive. But I'm wondering, like, how perilous was it or not for you? I mean, possibly going this way or going that way. And I'm just wondering how that informs, like, when you're trying to get your group attached to people who maybe need help but don't want it. Like, what was the turning point for you? And yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. You guys got good, deep questions. I like this. So I think, for me, obviously, looking back on it, what I've come to understand about myself and my journey is mine was more, I didn't have like a burning bush moment. Mine was more what I call the educational variety, where I made these small changes. And then over time, all of a sudden, I just looked back and realized that I was a different person. And I think, you kind of asked how hard it was. I mean, it was really hard, because when you get in there and I am somebody who I hate talking about prison like there's something weird and strange and different going on in there, because it really is not. It's the same as going on out here. Those people are people like we're people. What's going on in there is going on out here. It's the same thing. So what you got out here is, if you're trying to be positive and you're trying to go in a good direction in life, you're kind of going against the grain. You're swimming against the current, whether you're in here or whether you're in there or you're out here. It's the same thing. So in there, if you're trying to be positive and you're trying to do something different, you're trying to change your life, you're trying to look at, okay, well, how did I end up in here? What kind of mistakes did I make? Where do I need to make changes? You're really going against the grain. That's not what your average person is in there doing. And so, it is hard and it is difficult. And, kind of like what you said, something about people that are not ready to change. So, I remember, I had teachers in high school that would tell me, like, hey, what's going on with you? You seem to be really smart, but, you have trouble coming to school. Do you need a ride to school? Do you need a reminder? Just reaching out, trying to help me. And I just was like, I ain't got time for this. I ain't got time for you, and I'm running around with my friends doing my thing. But looking back on it years later, it's like, oh my God, this is somebody that, had I chosen to reach out to that person for help, I would have probably gotten some help, but I just wasn't trying to hear it. And so what I've come to understand lately is everybody has a jigsaw puzzle that they're trying to put together. And I can be fortunate enough that I can give you maybe a piece of your jigsaw puzzle. And then hopefully you're putting your jigsaw puzzle together. And you know how jigsaw puzzles are. You get the box and you see the flowing streams and the mountains and the little cabin. You're like, oh, that's cool, and you start putting it together, and you go with the border first. You start putting it together and you're like, this doesn't look nothing like the box. And then eventually when you put enough of them together, you're like, wow, I can start seeing the sky, or, hey, I can start seeing the mountain. I can start seeing, oh, there's the cabin, and eventually you get enough of this thing together to where you start seeing your vision, which is the box. And so what I like to think of, what I'm doing, what Reaching Out From Within is doing, with everybody, with what everybody that's involved in Reaching Out From Within is doing, hopefully, is we're providing people with pieces of this puzzle, and we're laying it out there. And the hope is that they're grabbing it and they're putting their puzzle together. And then at some point they're like, this is new and different for me, but oh my gosh, I can see this puzzle of what I'm trying to do here. And then, and you know how it goes too when you're doing a jigsaw puzzle. All of a sudden you start seeing things, it starts getting easier, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm putting all this together. And all of a sudden, boom, you got your picture. And so that's how I've started to look at things, like, because, you can't make anybody change. You can't make anybody want to change. I mean, you can provide the resources and the hope and the desire. You can provide all these things, but ultimately the individual has to do the work. And that sometimes can be the frustrating part, but it kind of depends on, for me anyway, what is my reasonings for doing what I do? Number one, I do what I do to show my gratitude to God for the new life that I've been given. That's the number one reason why I do anything that I do. Number two, I do what I do to make sure that I don't go back to places like that. And so number three, I do what I do that it might help somebody out. So that's kind of where I'm at in a nutshell.
All right, before we stop the recording and take a brief break, we've got one more question, and that's going to come from Carol Fields.
I appreciate your analogy. That's really great and applicable to so many things. I think that's really grand. And you're talking about difficult inside and out, and people are people, relates to sort of a two-part thing, which is, I don't have a sense, and maybe I missed something you said about what proportion of incarcerated folks in Kansas actually make this connection to the group. I'm assuming it's fairly small, but I don't know. And then how that relates to who got released, and what you said about COVID messing up reaching resources. So people that got released early because of COVID, is it really worse for them in some ways than it would be? They might have had more success getting released later or something like that. But
so, okay, so I think you asked like three things. I'm gonna try to
whichever you want to answer.
Yeah. So let me see. Okay, so there was the COVID. What help me out here? What was the three things you asked?
COVID release impact on success and how hard it is.
Yes. You asked about the number of guys, the number of
percent
people
of the population.
Yeah. Okay. So so really, when you think about how I describe how our groups run, and that we have about 2 hours. So really, we can only handle probably 25 is probably the max that we can handle in one setting, just because of the going around the group and then the participating of the group. We can probably handle about 25. So that's probably, I mean, you're looking at a prison of 1,000 people. We've got 25 of that group. Obviously, everybody wants to do more. We want to help everybody, but we are limited on resources. The facility is limited on meeting space. I mean, there's just all kinds of limitations. So we've kind of found that the best is probably about 25. So, we do on average about 400 gift boxes a year. So you figure it's about 400 across the state of Kansas of who we have participating in our groups. And the deal with the COVID is, when it comes time for them to be released, they don't really have a lot of choice. The prison system doesn't have a lot of choice on when they release them, because it's a law, it's by law. You can't hold a guy or a gal longer than what they're sentenced to. So even if they don't operate on Saturdays and Sundays as far as letting people out. So if your out date is on a Saturday or Sunday, you get out that Friday. I mean, that's how strict the law is. So, yeah. And honestly, you know, and then this is kind of a lot of things kind of get blamed on COVID, you know, like, oh, well, we're not doing that because COVID. And I think reentry is just a difficult thing, period. You know, it's just difficult, period. Let alone you put COVID on top of that, then it's kind of doubly difficult. So it's not like, you know, pre-COVID reentry was great. I mean, there's a lot of issues there, period. Just let alone you throw COVID on top of that, it's still difficult. So
Thank you.
So at this point, we are going to stop the recording and take a bio break. That's what we usually do. And also, I really have to go to the bathroom. Then we'll move into about a 15-minute unstructured question and answer session where you can make brief statements and, you know, do follow-ups and all that stuff. I want to remind everyone that next week we are going to be hearing from Zach Pastora, who is with the Sierra Club, and he's going to be talking about the topic of depleted water supply in Kansas and other threats to that. Please join via the same link before 10 a.m.